Alison, welcome to the Creating Meaningful Work podcast. I'm so happy to have you here and see you since you spoke. Actually, I did go to an event that you put on shortly after, but you spoke at our conference in 2018. And I think that was the last time we actually really connected.
Yes, it's so good to see you. And what year is it? I don't even know.
I know. Where are we now? I don't know. Time has not been, normal feeling. Time isn't even real. I've been thinking a lot about that lately. Anyways, yeah.
So let's stay there. Let's start there, right? Let's go down that rabbit hole.
Those are the things that you read a few articles on and you're like, this is what I think about the world now, but you have no idea how to talk about it or what it actually means. So
I love that. There's phases you should just watch The Matrix. I feel like that's where you're at right now. Just watch The Matrix and then call me. Sometimes it's Moana. There's different gospels of different movies that can resonate for your existential crises.
Yes. And Moana is definitely up there.
Moana, Tafiti, Taka, embracing the fire monster within. What?
I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it.
The water as the feminine energy, the guiding force.
There are so many truths in that movie.
Do you know I have a whole podcast called The Gospel of Moana?
No, I have got to listen to this.
Yeah, it's really good, actually. I'm it's actually really good.
I believe you.
Because so much to say, I made a podcast about it.
Genius. Because that movie, I watched it, I'll never forget, on a plane on the way back from a really great vacation, but it was kind of at a turning point in my life. And I bawled my eyes out on the plane. And I was like, I don't care who sees me. This is the best movie I've ever seen in my life. Why have I not seen this before? Because I watched it after it'd been out for a while. And I was like, why are we not all talking about this movie? This is amazing.
I feel like that often. So I am with you. So also, another good movie to watch if you are wondering about time is About Time. Have you seen that movie?
Yes, I have seen that. That's a great one. It's been a few years now, but I should watch that again. That's a good one.
It's really so heartwarming.
Yeah.
It's one of my husband loves that movie. And whenever he watches it, he's the most attentive, loving father. And he's always that way. But after he watches it, he's extra spending time with the children. And I'm I love that for you. I'll be watching Breaking Bad. See
That's awesome.
I'm glad you're doing so good at being such a caring person. No, just kidding. Okay, we're back.
Okay, so Alison, first of all, I just want to say, because I feel like it's so exciting, you have a book that's coming out next week called You're Already Awesome: How to Silence Your Inner Critic and Step into Greatness. I know you guys can't see me right now, but I'm holding it up. And you are beautiful. I love everything that you do with your brand and the colors and all the things. But how are you feeling with this book coming out?
It took 2 years, but I feel good.
Yeah. How long have you been working on it? I know these things take so long.
No, it took me 2 years to feel good. The book wasn't hard. No, sitting down and typing the words was, a task, but not actually very hard. The being okay and at peace with and surrendering to the events unfolding as they will with the book. That's what took a couple of years or a lifetime.
Yes.
I'm very happy to say that 1 week out from it launching, I'm able to enjoy the excitement and enjoy it. I couldn't say that a week ago, but and I say that because I think it's so often when we have huge things happening, whether it's a child or a new relationship or whatever it is, or you reach the goal, you accomplish the thing, and then you're but it doesn't feel like I thought it was going to feel. What's wrong with me? I did it wrong, or whatever it is. And so while my excitement and enthusiasm is absolutely like in this moment, that's where it's at. It's not always there. It's not always there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm really, really grateful to be able to have the capacity to feel joy about this rather than what I've felt for most of all of my biggest accomplishments or things that I've worked towards, which is usually I don't have the capacity to feel joy because I feel so much anxiety. And just riddled with, you know, anxiety, needing to understand, needing to anticipate. And so the book's called You're Already Awesome. And I wrote it because I needed it. I mean, that's it.
Isn't that, yeah, how it works? We talk and write about the things we need. Yeah.
Yeah.
So would you say
it's fun? It's fun. It's fun to get to enjoy it. It's fun that it's fun that it works. It's fun that it's fun that when you heal stuff and you surrender and you like really know your inherent. So the book is called You're Already Awesome, and it's set up in 12 shifts. And all of the shifts are to help you return to that truth. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to feel a tizzy of excitement and it's just about feeling positive emotions all of the time. It's just about approaching all of the complexities and the difficulties in life from the knowledge of your inherent wholeness, rather than what do I need to do to fix myself? What do I need to change? What more do I need to do, be, become, achieve? And it works. You don't feel as bad if you're not operating that way. I'm like, I feel like the hair club for men commercial where I'm like, it works for me. Like,
well, I think you're touching on just some really important themes here, because I mean, that's one thing we talk about on this podcast all the time is this idea that what we do and how we express ourselves can be exactly that, like an expression of ourselves, and doesn't have to be a means to an end to get to some arrival that isn't even real. Like you said, the things that we think are going to like, oh, feel, you know, I'll then feel this thing, like the arrival's not real. And how,
ooh, I
like,
love that. The arrival's not real.
yeah, it's not real. And I mean, not to
T-shirt.
say that we don't get to certain milestones that, like, you know, a book coming out, that's a big milestone and you can celebrate that, but it's never
But
the
like,
end.
but like, here's the thing about the book coming out is like, how do you celebrate it? How do you acknowledge it? Like, there's so many different ways to do it. So in the past, I probably, and in the past, I mean 5 or 6 years ago, because this has been an ongoing process, right? Of surrendering and letting go. Is it how many copies of the book I sell? Is it how many people want to talk to me about the book? Is it like, what's the measure of success? Like, the writing this book was the reason I did everything. It's the reason I started a blog. It's the reason I built an audience. I wanted to feel valid to have a book. And whether or not like I really recognized that's, and I don't, not to be overly harsh on myself, like that's true, but it was also true. Like I was like gathering the tools and the information and the lived experience to, and that's really what it was. It was gathering the lived experience to have this to say. But it's interesting because I was, you know, doing some extra therapy before the book comes out. And she was like, I want you to envision 15 minutes after the successful launch. And I'm like, when is that? What is that point in time? And so it's actually been so helpful because I'm throwing a book event, like a book launch party. And I like to do parties a certain way, which is very intensely. And it's a butterfly bop. There's a giant chrysalis you're going to get to emerge from.
Oh my
and
gosh.
it's like, it's gonna be real good. But so I've decided, and I'm happy that I put the party on that day. And the way that the party has worked out and the event has worked out, I mean, it's a 200-person event. But that when I envision a successful quote unquote launch, is I've decided it's 15 minutes after the event has been cleaned up and I'm sitting there, and it's like, it's just interesting because it's like, in order to have the capacity to have joy, I had to create capacity to have joy. In order to feel the joy of the moment, to feel the success, to feel the excitement, in the accomplishment, or just in the journey of it, it's like so much healing had to happen and space had to open up to not just feel that anxiety, not just feel like that, what's the next thing, and just let the thing be the thing. And man, I know, like, entrepreneurs and this podcast, I'm sure you talk about that so much, because we are just, and a lot of my book covers this idea of being fueled by frantic action versus inspired action. And, you know, that's just, it's not like I was doing anything quote unquote wrong or incorrect. That's just, my action was fueled by this, you know, adrenaline and anxiety.
Yeah, that's okay. Since you said that, I'm gonna pop open a page of your book.
I love when people quote my book to me. I just think it's
here
so,
you go.
I never know what you're gonna say.
What am I gonna say? There's lots of pages here. Okay, so I underlined this one because I relate, and I think people listening can relate. But you said, I learned early on that from a place of anxiety, I could get a lot done. And getting lots done made me feel good and valuable. Adrenaline fueled my body, and I could work for hours and hours with no sleep, completely blocking out any physical needs, ignoring pains and urges, except the one for Diet Coke.
As she grabs her giant Diet Coke. Yeah.
I think that, I mean, that is so relatable, right? And glorified too. You know, I think we are moving.
Oh man, we're moving, but we're not.
Like we're talking about it, at least.
We're talking about it. I am still greatly applauded when I'm in a manic state getting a lot done. Right? Like,
ain't that the truth? I know. It's
like, wow, look at all you can get done. And I'm like, I don't do the things that you do, which you cannot walk from my door to where I'm sitting without hopscotching over beads, gems, clothes. And like, I'm totally fine with that. Other people would be upset. So I say that where I'm like,
so true. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not doing the things that you think you need to get done. That's why I'm doing these.
Yep. Oh my gosh. I think about that all the time. I'm like, you know, I'm just not cleaning my house, and like, I'm just not like doing the dishes, and I'm not bathing my children. Like, and that gives me more time to do these other things, but it doesn't mean, it's just so interesting. But I think I noticed this, especially after I had my first baby, and Shepherd, he's 3 years old now. And we were talking about him a little bit before we were recording here, but he was 3 months old at his first Yellow conference. So I had him in 2019 in May, and then the conference was in August. And the amount of applause I got for that, like, actually made me feel really crappy, because I was like, I don't feel healthy. I don't feel like this was good. I don't feel like this was a good example to set for anybody. And yet here I am being applauded for this. And what if I actually gave myself a break and like treated myself well after having a baby? I wouldn't have gotten any applause. I wouldn't have gotten any affirmation from people. I mean, and then it brings in the fear that you think you're being lazy and you're not doing enough because, you know, you're not taking time to rest and take care of yourself.
Well, and I think that's so amazing that you were able to have that experience. And like, I love the way you said that, where you're like, if I had really taken care of myself in a way that was like best for me, nobody would have applauded it. And it's like always with a grain of salt, and you look back and you're like, The reason you did that, the reason I threw a 700 dance party with a 2-month-old nursing is because I did that as well. The reason I did it is because that's what I believed needed to be done. That's what I believed would get me the results that I wanted, and the results were peace. They were happiness. They weren't just money and fame and fortune. And so that's like, right. Like, yeah, those two, yes, please. But like, so I do think where I hope that the experience of reading my book, my intention is not to give anybody anything else to do or to be or to achieve. The experience of reading the book, my intention is that it's a cathartic experience that very compassionately you're able to see exactly those types of things, like and through storytelling. So there's a lot of storytelling, my story in the book, but just by you telling that story, so many people are able to relate to that. And I just feel like the conversation is okay, like, that's great that I did the best. Like, I got hit by a car and I was broken ribs, fractured vertebrae in 2017. And I was up doing a workshop 2 months later on muscle relaxers. Right? I needed to feed my family. I needed to work. I didn't have any other income. Was it the best way to take care of my body? I don't know. It was the best I could do at the time. And so I think it's like, there's this like dual pressure where you're like, I'm not setting a good example for people. And it's like, well, you can't know, like, sometimes you have to live the experience. You have to live the experience. Like, it's so easy after the fact to be like, that's not a good example. People shouldn't like do that, or I wouldn't recommend it this way. And I find myself in that position often when it comes to people like wanting to build like social media platforms and channels, or I'm like, yeah, don't do it. That's a terrible idea. It's going to ruin your life. It's evil. It's the devil's playground. And then I'm like, no, like, people gotta have their lived experience. And I think sometimes, like, in an effort to distance ourselves from how we would do things differently, we're like, oh, don't do it that way. Don't do it that way. When it's like, you and I do events. The reason you were doing an event with a 3-month-old is because a lot of paychecks rested on that. A lot of self-worth rested on that. A lot of other people's expectations rested on that. You're not an idiot, right? You're not a reckless idiot. So that has been, you're like, yes, yeah, I'm like, yes.
Thank you. I'm not an idiot.
Yeah. Well, and that's I mean, that's the book. That's the practice, is returning to the awesome. And by awesome, I mean like beholden of awe, like jaw dropping awe, like inspiration, glory, connection, divinity, returning to that place within yourself. And taking action from there. And the best thing about taking action from there is it feels much more effortless. It's much more compassionate. And I feel like, like something has really shifted in you when you're able to look back compassionately at how you behaved before. Just like you were saying, like, that wasn't a very compassionate way to treat myself. Right. But then it is so hard. And for me, it is so hard to then not also lose the compassion in beating myself up for how I wasn't compassionate.
The spiral. Yeah, that's so real though. And, we talk a lot on this podcast also about perfectionism and creating with excellence, and how those two things often we think are the same. Like, people will be like, oh, I'm a perfectionist, meaning like, oh, I need something to be really well done and good. But really, perfectionism is what you're talking about. Perfectionism is when we're working to create something based on external expectations, and whether it's societal norms, what people think of us, or, the list goes on, versus creating with excellence, coming from an internal place of conviction and desire and love and compassion. That's something that we want to express in the world. So outwardly, we can, create even this, it could be the same thing at the end, but our motivation being externally driven or internally driven can be so different. But it's really hard to move away from that's mental shift. And there's a little bit of that's healthy, right? Like if we don't care about what people think of us at all, we're like a psychopath or yeah, I think that's what Brene Brown says.
And it's a sociopath, right? Like
sociopath, that's right.
You shirk all societal norms. And I love that definition that you shared of perfectionism and relating it to the external value. And so like the premise of like, the book was, you're already awesome. Okay, cool. Why don't I feel it? It's like, cute. That sounds cute. Good job. I'm awesome. I feel terrible. And I'm doing everything I can. I'm doing all the self-help. I'm doing all of the therapies. I'm doing all of the exercising. And I still feel terrible. Right. And at the root, just like you were saying, at the root is, if that piece within you that connects to your inherent wholeness, your inherent worth, like you think of your newborn children, like what do they have to do for you to love them? Like what is their value? Like what's Ember's value? She
yeah,
she just exists. And by just existing, you're good. Now, what's hard is knowing that you've made mistakes and you're still good. What's hard is knowing that other people are disappointed with you and actually think you're crap and you're still good. It's hard thinking you can't forgive yourself and the actions you took were naive and stupid, or you hurt people and you're still good. And the reason why it's difficult is because we just forget. I did a news segment yesterday, like on the local news, and she's like, so why do we, not feel awesome? And I was like, I think it's in the book, but like, I'm like, I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure it's in the book. But really the what came out of my mouth was like, we forget. And why do we forget? Just like you were saying, societal norms, generational trauma, our upbringing, our innate personality. And so much of the model of success in business has been completely under the guise of patriarchal roles, the patriarchal model, masculine models of success that then, I have a very strong masculine energy, but I also have very strong feminine energy. So I'm just like a lot of intensity happening over here. So I can see now like those dichotomies within me battling themselves out in this striving for success, in this striving for awesome. And at the end of my podcast, which we've been doing for 5 or 6 years, at the end of every podcast, I say, only you can be you, and you're already as awesome as you need to be. And it's so funny because I did not know the title of the book. Like I'd written the book, I had formatted the book, and I still didn't know what I wanted to title the book, even though I have a list of like 20 book titles, because I think writing book titles is like the most fun thing ever. Like one book title is so good is The Year My Underwear Kept Getting Bigger. That's a very good book. I have a lot of good book titles. But I didn't have a title for this book. And how funny, the editor, she just was like, you're already awesome. It's the thing I've been saying at the end of every podcast episode for 6 years.
Wow.
Not only am I already awesome, it's already there. It was already there.
Wow.
And so it's just like meta layer, where you keep going down. And at the end of the day, what I believe is that as we come to that compassion, like you and I were talking about, that compassion for ourselves, we're able to hold more space for mistakes that we've made, so we can have more open conversations with people and take more accountability, when we have more grace and compassion for ourselves, and we're kinder and softer to ourselves, and we're not worried about what everybody thinks, we can actually hear what people who we like value their opinion think without feeling like we need to die if it doesn't meet a certain criteria. And I say that very sincerely, like, you know, the amount of shame that I would have over making a mistake or letting someone down was like catastrophic, and like could lead me to be very suicidal. And so that level of like ruthlessness towards self, that I peel that back throughout the book, where, you know, after I got hit by a car, I was able to see, even though I had healed, like being compassionate to myself in a certain way, there was all these other ways that I was still beating the crap out of myself. And then I wrote the book in this like elevated, beautiful, inspired place. And then my body shut down. Like it shut down. Like a lot of stuff surfaced. It shut down. It stopped working. And I was out. I don't have my office space. I don't have my employees. I mean, I let everything go to heal. And it's hard. Like it's hard to do the workshop with a 3-month-old baby, right? It's hard to do the conference with a 3-month-old baby, but taking care of yourself is actually harder for me, from my experience. Actually, people are like, it's so good that you took a break. Like I took a break over the last like year and a half from the internet and from putting stuff out. People are like, it's so great you took a break. I'm like, it is great, but it's like I left my job and any source of income, and then also had a bunch of medical bills. So like it wasn't like some sort of like stance. It was a stance of self-compassion, like that. It was a stance of self-compassion, but I will say it was costly. And the reason why I say that is not to discourage anyone, but to just acknowledge, like, no, we're not all idiots. There's not a reason. There's like, you're not all just being so stupid. It's hard. It's difficult, but it's so valuable. Like all things that are difficult are. And it's hard, but it's not as hard as not healing and operating from that place of franticness. Right?
So yes, that's so true. It reminds me of that quote that I'm going to mess up, but it's like, when the pain of the rose like blooming, do you know what I'm talking about? When the pain of remaining in a bud is worse than the pain it takes to bloom. Anyways, you guys know what I'm talking about.
I like, yes to that.
So you wrote this book, and you were saying that it came from an inspired place, and then you said your body shut down, and then is that what then led you to taking, you said, a year and a half off from being on the internet? Wow. Can you talk a little bit about like what that point was where you were like, I need to step away? Because for those of you who don't know, Alison is really big on Instagram and has a loyal following, and like online influencer stuff is like a big part of what you do. So to take a step away from that, I mean, I feel like that would be a tough decision. So what did that look like from, okay, you just wrote this book. It's like, wow, this all came out of me. My body's shutting down, taking a step back. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So it's like, in retrospect, I can see, so probably 7 or 8 years ago, I was like, I cannot live my life and do any sort of like paid advertisement online. So I had moved the model away from, I would do my branding workshops, keynote speaking, and sell my own like courses through my Instagram and email and my podcast. And so trying to find a way to navigate Instagram with like the growing kind of like issues within me, and the way like that was very difficult. And so it's something that like, it wasn't like, oh, it just happened, like I wrote a course called How to Make Instagram Work for You, which essentially is a really great course, where it's talking about like how to like work your personality with social media. But like you can see like there's evidence of that like struggle where it's like I'm wrestling with it. That's why I'm interested in talking about it and coming up with some solutions and ideas. And so it very much looked like I hit a point where I had finished the book, and from the place of like self-compassion and joy and flow that I had written the book in, I decided I just was being cruel, that like I didn't know anybody who worked as hard as I did and spent as much time like taking care of mental things to still feel riddled with anxiety all of the time. So I just and like there would be some brief reprieves here and there, but it's like I got like real with myself about like what the level of suffering was actually like. And then like my body just stopped working. So like it was in my bladder, in my nervous system. So essentially like I would have to pee. I had to pee, it felt like I had to pee for over a year. Like never stopping ever, like massive pain, never stopping. Nobody can figure out what's going on. So, like so many different appointments. So it was like, how did I make the decision? I made it one step at a time. But it also was with so much faith because I cannot even tell you my programming up to that point, how counterintuitive it felt to not be building up my platforms when I have this book that I want to share with the world. I honestly, when I stopped posting, like there was a period of time when I thought the publishers were going to just call me up and be like, we're not interested in doing a book with you anymore. They would have never done that because they're really great people who see my value as more than a social media number, but that's where I was at. That's where I was at. So it's like it had to happen for me to get what was happening, which is how much of my worth was tied up in what I could offer, tied into what people wanted me to offer because I have a reach on social media. And it was just really, really hard to not freak out that I wouldn't have a book. I basically had to be willing. I was willing to let every single thing go. That's how much physical pain I was in. So it's like in the past, I overrode the physical pain like that I just overrode it. So it's age, it's wear and tear, but it also is compassion. And so I believe as my capacity for self-compassion expanded and expanded, it was like I just could no longer in good conscience, in good faith, continue to live that way. Like it just felt so not true or congruent with what I believed in any sense. To keep putting myself in a position like, and also I was in so much physical pain, I couldn't talk. So like there's that too. Like there's like the amount of physical pain I was in was mind-blowing. And for the amount of time, it made me go batty. Like really I had a psychotic break. Like I mean it's like not funny, but it is like it really, the amount of physical pain, the amount of dysregulation broke the system. So I also know my ability to shut that down and override it. It's like I could have done it, but it just would have caused further harm. And so I say that. And then after about like 6 months, I was like, this is so great. I'm never going back. Oh my gosh. I love flowers. I'm one with the earth. I don't know what anybody thinks about anything. And people would be all stressed. So and so is talking about this or that. And I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, everybody's mad or this. And I'm just like, I'm making flowers and art. And I don't even know what the trends are and anything. So I like my inner artist like emerged, like
Wow.
poured out. I mean, I started painting on walls, drawing on walls, doing floral design, all of these pieces of me that, you know, very beneficial in unconscious healing and that type of work, but also just that, you know, had been left by the wayside, and you know, it was time to pick them back up again. So that was really awesome. So then I didn't want to put the book out because
Yeah, it's like, what do you do? You're in this
right?
magical place. Yeah, and then this book is coming.
Yes. And as it got closer and closer, you know, some of the progress and the different healing that had happened was started to go back. And so then I got even more depressed and more like down, because I'm like, I can't do it. Like it's coming out in August and I can't get out of bed. I can't be out of bed for a full day. Like I can't go through a day not medicated. Like I don't want to be like doing podcast interviews like in this mental state, right? And so there just was more healing to do. Like there was but the only way that presented itself is because I started to move forward. So that was what needed, like that's what it was, the season for it. Right? It was the season. And as I've, you know, gone to put this book out, it has brought up so many cute little things I didn't know were things.
I bet.
I'm like, oh, that's cute. Well, that's cute that I'm so upset about that. Wow. Or even planning the event, working with people, work relationships, just every single part of my family, the way my family supports it, like, and they do support it, but like even like the way that I'm interpreting their support, like every little thing gets to inform me of little places that hadn't quite healed because they weren't in use. And that's how we move forward. And so connecting to that inherent wholeness, that awesome, I believe that that's like the work to do for anything, whether you want to build greater compassion, whether you want to build a greater well of like emotional resilience, so that you can be a bigger tool for helping others. Like you can't, and that's really what it's about, is because my ability to go and speak to a room and then not have to beat myself up and like question everything I did, is when I start freeing myself up from that, like it's so much more pleasant for me to exist. And also like, think of how much more capacity I have to share. And so it was definitely hard, and it has been definitely challenging to build the capacity back up to want to share. Because there's also part of you that's like, well, what do you do when you accomplish your dream? You know,
Yeah.
you get a new dream, but there's like a period of mourning, because it's something that propelled you for so long. And you know, a book is just like a big project. So anybody can relate, because it's like a big project or a relationship. And if you're the type of person who, you know, gets a lot of validation and fulfillment from outside relationships, you're going to relate, because when you lose that boyfriend or that friend or that girlfriend or that partner, you feel like a failure. And for me, when I wasn't making money and I wasn't providing a bunch of events and things for people to go to, I didn't feel like I had any value.
Mm.
So I had to stop. I didn't know that I thought that. And so it's like interesting, right? It's like I just had to have so much faith. That's really what it is. Like it was so much surrender. It was so much surrender for a perfectionist, people pleasing, rebel control freak. Like think like I'm at war with myself at all times. And the surrender of it is like that's what it looks like. I just surrendered. I surrendered in exhaustion. I surrendered in pain, but I also surrendered in faith. And, you know, there's definitely a lot of doubt. But, you know, what's interesting, today is August 9th when we're recording this. And I remember, I think it was 2018. I really do. I think it was 2018. On August 9th, I was sitting in my car and I was meeting with somebody, and I just like for work, and I was just riddled with so much self-doubt. I wanted to hire her. I wanted her to want to work with me, and I wanted her to like tell me what to do with my business and all of these different things. And I just remember deciding in that moment that it was such a waste of emotion having so much doubt in myself. That like I was going to build this thing that was already built, that of course I was just trying to validate to myself more and more and more, right? It was already there. Just like you're already awesome was already there. It was already there. It was already built. And I had this like moment, and I put it in my phone, and it reoccurs every year. And it's today, it's no more doubt day. That's what it says in my phone. And I just like declared, and like, I don't even remember when it is until it pops up. And okay, so that was 4 or 5 years ago, however long ago it was. It doesn't mean that all the doubt just went away, but like I can see how it set me on a path of healing so that the doubt can go away. And back to like, you know, being a sociopath or a narcissist or a blippity bloppity bloop, you know, yeah, if you're worried about it, then you're not. Like, we're good. If you're worried about it, I mean, like, but it comes down to, it's like, do even the very, very worst people, is the world better served by having compassion and forgiveness? Even of the people that we like absolutely cannot like stand their actions. Is the world better served when we forgive? It doesn't mean there's not accountability. It doesn't mean there's not responsibility. And why is that so hard to extend? I really believe it's because we're not extending it to ourselves. That's why I'm excited to snuggle up with whoever has the book. It's like, I'm just going to snuggle with you, and we're going to have a lovely, fun experience where I quote Moana and the Tao Te Ching and Wayne's World and Billy Madison and, you know, lots of other pop songs. And also we're going to just do some quick light philosophy, but not light at all. It's like deep spirituality principles.
That is what is so fun about this book too. Like, I love the amount of exclamation points that are in there as well. Like,
I do not regret a one of them.
Thank you. I feel, you know, I think we just need to do what we want to do. And if we want to have some exclamation points, do the exclamation points. It's not,
don't
worry about it.
Your patriarchal system of professionalism on my exclamation points. I will exclaim, GD exclaim. That's what I will do, because that is how I speak. Is anybody listening thinking that it's not authentic for me to put an exclamation point at the end of my sentences? Are people listening to me speak like, wow, she doesn't use a lot of emotion in her voice? No, I'm an exclamation point. Like, this was the copy editor was like, I left as many exclamation points as I could.
Oh, I love that. As many as you could.
Yes. Like, I don't need them for everything. And like, that's also, you know, I'm a copywriter background. So I'm like, yes, you want to build an arc and tension, and there's pacing and writing, and it's poetry. And I love it place, but yeah, there's a lot of exclamation points.
Yeah, which is great. I'm all
feel.
about the exclamation points in my emails and all the things.
Yes, I love it.
We have just a few minutes left here. First of all, thank you also for sharing all of that. I know that it's not easy to revisit some of this stuff, and appreciate you sharing it. Because I think that as you're talking, I'm just like, yeah, I don't have the exact same experience that you do, but I can relate like 100%.
Oh yeah.
You talk in here about people getting mad at you because they didn't have their popsicle at the event that you planned. And I have like brackets over things because I'm like, yes, you said I wasn't going to dive into this because of the minute, but you just said, and then I refunded her ticket and apologized, and then I broke. And I'm like, yes, the spirals that I've had after after Yellow conferences, and just if somebody of course people are going to complain, right? Like you said, you can't please 900 people. That's one of the chapter titles that you have. I know. We think we can. We want to so bad.
The shift, I think the shift that story is it how they feel means nothing about me?
Yes.
Is it that one?
That's the one. Yeah.
So I think that's good. And I'm glad you brought it up, because even quickly giving an example of the way that the shifts are intended to work is like, yeah, sure, is a mantra, but also like, how does your body respond to that? How does it feel? Does it feel like a relief? Does it feel too good to be true? How they feel means nothing about me. If everybody believed that to be true, would the world operate? How would that change the way the world operates? And that's kind of what I explore in each shift, and how the shift of how they feel means nothing about me, which, is a very Taoism concept or Buddhist concept of like, like how you're perceiving me is, it's a Don Miguel Ruiz, the smoky mirror, your perception of me is through a fog of reality. And then we can go back to what is even time? Like what is perception? Are you perceiving me through this lens at what moment in time? Like, but in very like, I hope fun, digestible, and also just cathartic little bullet points and stories. People are able to explore these deeper themes, like how they feel means nothing about me, and how the shift of actually being able to believe that will set you free. Because you're already awesome. So how, the conference attendee feels, let's say every single person who came to the event thinks that I'm a bad person. Does that mean I'm a bad person? Like, go back to the baby. And I think like so much of what we do is like buffering ourselves when it's just like, no, you're good. Like, we can give us all the mantras and all the affirmations, and that's great. But like, you're good. Oh, but I hurt someone. I'm a monster. Yeah, you're good. You're good because you're a human being. You're good. You're already awesome.
I love that. And
so as I have been able to believe that and like act on it, I have seen so many miracles in my life, in my relationships, and so much magic, so much healing, and so much more joy in like, you're doing good work, girl. Like, you're doing good work. I'm doing good. Like, we are trying to do good work. We feel really crappy for how much good we're trying to do. Right? Like,
is that the truth? Yeah.
Yeah. And so you're like, how are you feeling? I'm like, I'm kind of surprised to say it, but I'm actually feeling good. I feel good about what I'm sharing. I don't feel like so defensive. And I'm just like, let's see what happens. Let's just see what happens. We'll just see.
I love it. I love it. Well, Alison, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
I
love what you do. I love the spaces you create, and I really appreciate you sharing it with me.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your message with not only us here on this podcast, but getting it into word form with your book. Everybody go, by the time this comes out, this book will be out. So you're already awesome. Yes. How to silence your inner critic and step into greatness. Go find it. Is there any place they should get it? Anywhere?
There's a great I'm just actually really excited. I made a quiz called What's Your Awesome Magic?
Ooh.
And actually very excited about it. I used like all my tarot and symbolism archetypes and all of my like psychology hoodoo voodoo and just had so much fun. So if you go to you'realreadyawesome.com, YOURE, alreadyawesome.com, it has all the places you can buy the book. It has that quiz. It has a list of the shifts. It also has, if you've bought the book or buy the book, you can get some meditations and some fun bonuses. So that's a good place to go. And then if you can find me, through that. It's not hard to find me.
Awesome.
He's around.
Okay. You're already awesome.com. We'll put it in the show notes. That's where you can find the book and Alison and all her awesomeness. Thank you so much for being here. You're awesome.
Oh, double finger point.
Oops. Oh, okay.
You got it.
Never find the